So, welcome everybody to Flera's, the green and liberal think tank, as we call it, and also the think tank working a lot on environmental economics, on the solutions actually, how to manage different environment problems and most importantly climate change. Myself, I'm Martin Ådahl, I'm going to be the moderator, I'm also the director of Flera's, and the reason we have this seminar is we have been extremely lucky to have the right person at the right time. You may maybe think that the most important news today is the re-election of Barack Obama, but there are other things that are almost equally important actually right now on the international and EU agenda. And Flera has been working very extensively on emission markets, which are right now the most forceful tool we have to price carbon and to reduce emissions and take climate action. And right now, on the biggest market, the EU ETS, the European market, there is a big debate concerning the carbon price and the ambitions of this particular market. And there's also a very important proposal on the table, or several proposals in fact on the table, one of which wants to retire 1.8 billion at least emission rights from this system, to reduce the emission by a one-off measure by 1.8 billion tons of CO2 equivalents, which is a fantastic sum. In fact, it's 25% of Sweden's annual emissions. And we find this so important and so crucial for Sweden that we have from Flera's published a paper on this so-called set-aside of allowances. They may also be put off for some time. There are different proposals, and we also have a small policy brief in Swedish here. But the reason we're here today is we've been eminently lucky to have one of the top civil servants from the British side deeply into all those issues, passing by Stockholm, and we grabbed him and asked him to come here to give the background and mostly to have an open discussion with our different discussants and also with you in our most knowledgeable audience. So I'll just introduce our different participants here first, and most notably Paul Irving. You are the Europe and Climate Energy Policy Officer for Climate Change at the Climate Change and Energy Unit for the Foreign Office, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the UK. And you're also one of those classical civil servants in the UK that we know from TV series Rule, their ministers. You've been at the Department of Energy and Climate Change, you've been at the Transport and Environment Department, you've been at all those crucial departments inside the UK administration and managed those issues since a long time, so you're deeply into the machinery. We are really happy to have you here to present this proposal and the general debate. And as commentators to Paul, we're going to have Stefan Henningsson, who's the climate spokesperson for WWF Sweden, and also been very involved in the Brussels part of WWF. Erik Filipsson, no less, who is the climate and energy policy analyst and you could say spokesperson for Vattenfall, our top power utility and power company in Sweden, and also Mikael Möller from the chemical and plastic companies, who's been one of the critics, one could say, of this set-aside. And without further ado, I will just leave the floor to Paul. He will just make some initial remarks, then we'll have comments from the different, and then we'll just have an open discussion with questions from all sides on this very important issue. Paul, the word is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invite, and it's lovely to see so many people here who are interested in this issue. Really important issues and a really important debate, so hopefully we can have some good discussion today. As most of you may be aware, the European Commission recently published a proposal on how to tackle the current challenges with the EU ETS. And their proposal was to set aside, backload some of the allocations towards the end of the current EU ETS period. I think the first thing to say from the UK perspective is that we recognise that we need to act now because the EU ETS is not delivering in the way we would hope it would have delivered. So we need to make some form of intervention. The UK, the important thing for the UK is that we maintain our EU ambition, so that we are seen as the world leaders in climate change and low carbon, and therefore, rather than backloading, our preference is for the cancellation of the emissions. If we postpone them, then there is a chance that we will end up postponing them again. So rather than doing that, the UK position is to support cancellation. It's a position that has been agreed across Whitehall, so it's our Treasury Ministry is very keen on that. All the ministries are agreed. We do think, though, that we need a more long-term debate on how the EU ETS functions, whether the EU ETS is fit for purpose post-2020, what the post-2020 framework will look like, and how we can actually deliver the long-term ambition of it, which is in line with the UK Climate Change Act of 80% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2050. The sort of low-carbon roadmap that the European Commission has proposed. So we very much see the EU ETS as a tool for delivering that emissions reduction. I think I'll stop there for the moment, and then maybe open it up to other people.
May I just add, have you, this proposal, it's the only one, as far as I know, that exists on the table right now among the different, there's many ideas that have been discussed, but this is the one proposal that has been officially put on the table for cancelling the sort of permanent cancellation of the emission rights. Is the sole ambition from the UK government to improve the EU ETS climate efficiency, the way of reducing emissions, or do you see other co-benefits from putting this proposal forward?
I think certainly from a financial benefit, the UK could make substantial financial benefit from actually the cancellation process. So there's the financial element, which is quite important, and actually, but more broadly, you know, the importance is that the EU ETS does deliver the sort of low carbon ambition.
Right. Stefan, we'll come back to the different details of the proposal, and the word is you for a sort of a brief comment on the bridge proposal.
A brief comment? Well, the brief comment is that we need to increase ambition in the EU. We have a gigaton gap globally for 2020 that is between 6 and 11 gigatons in order to have a fair chance in staying well below 2 degrees global warming. If it's only going to be 6 gigatons gap that we need to fill, EU needs to go to 30% by 2020. If it's 20% 2020, and all other countries are at that lower range, we're up at 11 tons gigaton gap. So we need to decrease this gigaton gap and then take further actions in seeing how we can actually stay below 2 degrees. And in order to fix the ETS, I mean, it's absolutely not working, and so we think the British proposal is very, very good, because something needs to be done. Intervention is needed, exactly as Paul is saying, and we are fully supporting exactly the set-aside approach or the backloading approach that Paul and Great Britain is proposing.
May I ask both of you, given that you're behind, the fact that the price has gone down from above 30 euros per ton and down to, at its lowest point, 6, and now somewhere around 8 euros per ton, is this in itself a problem, or is it? How is your sort of general view on this? I'll soon give the word to Erik also on this, but or is it just the fact that the system has not delivered enough climate efficiency?
Well, okay. I think the price in itself is a problem, because the EU ETS was also is also supposed to create revenue for countries in order to create more money, new and additional money for green investments, which is crucial as well now when we're in a financial crisis in the EU. And we just released the report yesterday, actually, with WWF and Greenpeace together, which is saying that a stronger carbon market could net EU governments over 60 billion euros. So that's 60 billion euros, or is 78 billion euros potentially, if EU is also linking this set aside to 30% ambition, in money that can be used in further increasing investment. It could also be used in filling the Green Climate Fund, which EU has an obligation to do. And in order to create this income, apart from, of course, creating more pressure on reducing emissions, then having new and additional funding streams for the EU will be very, very important. And the EU ETS can play a very, very important role in this.
Yeah, I think I'd endorse a lot of those comments. I think certainly one of the things that the UK is pushing at the moment at a domestic level is a carbon floor price, as we call it. So, I mean, it's clear that the current EU ETS is not actually driving the low carbon investment that we need, and the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, has actually made that point quite strongly. So we do need to intervene to see how we can improve it.
So the low price in itself is also a problem, according to you. We'll see. Erik, what is your comment to the proposal and also to what has been said before?
Okay. I think on a general note, we share the same concern about the EU ETS because it's in a serious situation. We are facing not what I would describe as a price crisis, but more a credibility crisis, because people don't trust the EU ETS that it works, that it delivers. Stefan said that it's not functioning. I'm not sure that I would go that far, because the EU ETS has been improved in so many ways the last years, and most of those changes will take effect from January next year.
You're talking about the fact that more emission rights are being auctioned, or
for example, but there are many other things, like we have one common cap for the first time starting from next year. We have fully harmonized allocation principles. We have full auctioning and longer trading periods, and this greater visibility when it comes to the caps development. So it's a scheme that functions really well, I would say, and it has been responding to both changes in fundamentals and political impetus in a very good way. So that's a health. I'm sorry. So I think what we've seen when it comes to prices, it's a healthy behavior. But then we have a credibility problem around the EU ETS, and if I should say something more specifically on this proposal, I think we have come to the conclusion that there might be reason for some action to recalibrate the system, and I'm happy to hear that Paul is talking about the permanent constellation, because what we have in the political process today is something different. It's backloading, and we don't.
We should maybe. I mean, I'm sorry for those in the audience who are obviously. I know for myself that before you get into this subject, you are first you're not aware what the actual terms are about, and then after a while you're not aware that people don't understand the actual terms if they're not deeply into this discussion. So, if you feel that things are unclear that we are now referring to very rapidly, please do ask the basic and not at all stupid questions about how the system works. But just coming back, the backloading, if we should explain very simply, means
reshuffling the supply within the third trading period, reducing in the beginning and putting it back in the end, without changing the overall supply and demand balance.
Why are you critical of this?
Because we don't see that it will have any meaningful effect, and it's reason to question the effectiveness of that measure alone, and therefore we think it must be linked to a wider structural reform.
And the reason is why will not have an effect? It's
because the supply and demand balance is unaffected throughout phase 3.
they're simply, it would reduce the number of emission rights. And there's also the fact that almost 1 billion emission rights are actually now saved by the companies in the balance. I know, have you saved Vattenfall yourself emission rights, banked or kept them in
I mean, the power sector has been the sector which has had scarcity, a need to buy allowances in the market from industry and from auctions, and the situation will obviously change even more dramatically next year when we have to buy 100%.
100% of your allowance. Before I move to finally giving a critical voice here by Mikael, I just ask you, in the media, of course, it's been mentioned that now you have bought a lot of coal-powered stations and power stations and also gas, and you are now facing quite a heavy bill for paying for the emission rights for the production at those sites. How come you're still proposing a measure that will increase the price?
I mean, we have, as you say, a rather complex portfolio with a lot of different energy sources, and we're facing a €1 billion bill when we have to pay 100% of the allowances, even with the prices we see today, 8-10 euros. So it's not a easy decision, of course, but we believe that we have a system today that lacks so much credibility, and I mean, it's politically it's not likely to be accepted that the system doesn't feature any scarcity in phase 1, in phase 2, and perhaps not in phase 3. I mean, and I think one thing I could add on that is that the market today expects that there will be some kind of intervention to some extent. Those €8 we see today is already incorporating an expectation. So wouldn't there be any measure at all that we would see a further price drop to maybe €4-5?
Very, very, very low. Then, Paul, is there anything you'd like to add, or?
No, I don't think so. No, not at this stage. No.
Okay.
I mean, I think just to echo the importance of, making sure that the EU ETS is effective and maintaining that environmental credibility, or restoring the environmental credibility of the EU ETS. I think that's a really important point.
Mikael, we'll finally give the voice to somebody who's deeply critical of the set-aside. Please, what would be your comment on this British proposal?
Well, of course I will have a view that is quite different from my colleagues here. Our perspective is the ETS has delivered its goal. It has superseded its goal on 21% earlier than predicted, at lower cost than predicted. So what's the problem? So we do not see the problem. The ETS is working. That's our view. I've been listening very keen on my colleagues here, and there are different, seems to be different goals, or what is ETS supposed to do for us. There has been the issue of financing for the member states has been there. And of course, for our view, the industry competing on a global arena, we also see what can we do in order to contribute to the sustainable society in the future. How can we attract investment so that we can make the things the sustainable society needs? And in order to do that, there is no way around it. We have to be competitive on a global scale.
And how would why would the set-aside affect that possibility?
Well, for starters, we were talking about predictability. We have set a system of lowering the emissions until 2020. We have set rules. Now there are proposals to change those rules. In our view, it's a way of saying this is not a stable system. intervening with it in order to push up the price, because that's the final goal. Is as we read it, what we want to do, or what the proposals aims to do, not we, is to up the price, and we cannot understand that, because you up the price, but you have the same emissions reductions, so it only gets less cost effective to go there, and you will hurt industry by doing it. You will get some money to the state, but I would say if we want to use that money in order to make energy efficiency measures happen, wouldn't it be better that the money stayed in the companies so we can do it?
You've also been very much focusing on the energy bill that you face as from electricity bill, and the fact that you don't have, I mean, a number of companies don't really have emission rights, or don't have so many emission rights that it kind of covers this free distribution that the EU has. Is that is that the driver also behind your position? Because I mean, apart from the principled one.
Well, of course, in our perspective, we're being the energy-intensive industry in the Nordic area, and of course in Swedish, we use a lot of electricity, so we are electricity-intensive. And we're very happy about that, because the wonderful electricity Erik's company is supplying us with does contain a very little amount of CO2. So if we can harness that and pack it and be good at what we do, we can export our clean electricity products. So we think we have a joint chain of value here that we want to protect. But at the same time, we have had most of our emission allowances distributed to us for free for our direct emissions. That will change. So as Erik rightly told you, in the time 13 to 20, we are only allocated through very hard benchmarks. So we will not be covered. That's for the direct emissions, so the cost will go up, and we have to find a way to cope with that. But secondly, indirectly, the price of the emission rights, or the price to release CO2 by Erik's companies that burn fossil fuels to make electricity will be transferred to us 100%. Maybe you heard this morning that 60 billions is the check that we pick up as electricity users, because even if Erik has to pay 1 billion for emission rights, they will just transfer it to us who use it. So I would just like to add that Swedish electricity is to 96% without carbon dioxide emissions, so we actually pay for nothing. And that amount of money that we have to pay could be as equal as what we have to pay for our direct emissions. So it's a very important issue, the price effect on electricity for us. Sorry for being so long on it, but it's such a complicated thing, this yes. Emission trading system.
What about the fact now our own researcher Lars Zetterberg had a different view on the follow-through on the electricity price, but given that there is 100% follow-through on the electricity price from the increase, if there has been a reduction in the price for emissions and also from the futures contracts that reflected the expectations from far above 20 euro per ton, and it's now gone down to 6, and maybe if there's no intervention at all, down to 4, if, as Erik mentioned, haven't you got a fantastic improvement in your conditions during those years? And if there is somewhat of a re-increase of the, whilst this environmental integrity is improved, how won't you survive, even if the price goes up a bit back from?
Well, again, 60 billions that we pay for no carbon dioxide emission emitted, almost, says it all. I mean, before 2005, we didn't have that cost into the electricity price. So it hasn't gotten better. I mean, there has been higher prices on carbon dioxide emissions from 2005 until now, because the price is low now. But of course, there's an added price to be paid by companies who compete with companies that doesn't have this price added on their costs.
But the electricity price is still not particularly high in the European perspective in Sweden still, and also it's apparently there must have been a downward push during this lowering of the emission rights.
Well, yeah, the market works. So if the emission prices go down, the electricity price go down.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that we love the connection of paying for non-emitting carbon dioxide electricity, but it shows that the market actually functions.
Okay. Is there anybody who want to comment on this? Erik?
I think Mikael raises a very valid point, the cost issue. I mean, the whole transition of the energy system is associated with cost. It's a tremendous challenge to achieve decarbonization. The 2050 objectives that the EU heads of states has endorsed, and as a company very much involved in on a European level in the energy markets, and also responsible for a lot of emissions, we take this very seriously. And we think that markets, using market forces, is the most the most cost-effective means to achieve this transformation. And I mean, markets and price signals. A CO2 price is very central for achieving this, and the fact that other commodities are reflecting this as well, I think it's a necessary element. And even though we have low prices, and I would be the first one to say that low prices are good. I said that it's a healthy behavior. It's not it's normal for a recession to have low prices because the demand is low, and we also make little investments. People in the industry and the utilities are doing very little investments in a recession. So there is no need or reason to think that there is a big lock-in effect of emissions during that period, I would say. But when the economy eventually recovers and the price picks up, then we will see investment being more steered in an environmental friendly direction. But the thing is, and that's my message, that I think that since not everybody is pleased with the CO2 price of €5 or even €10, they push through this transition with other means instead. And those means are often much more costly to the society. For example, we have a lot of energy policies in Europe today. I made a comparison. I convert the support or the incentive to a common CO2 metric and compare it to the CO2 price, and you can see, like, if you have €8 today, the explicit CO2 price, you have implicit CO2 prices from other policies of hundreds, 200, €300 per ton, and that's not very cost effective and sustainable in my view. So using markets is the way ahead, according to my view.
Stefan, and then I'll give a word to Paul to give it further.
Yes. Just a comment on the pushing the higher price through the value chain. And one thing I would like to sort of ask is, my EU colleagues are saying as well, as in terms of the EU ETS decision, there's also a compensation mechanism for a higher electricity price built into the decision already in 2008. So that's in there. How that will have effect, I'm not an expert to say, but I just want to raise that because there is a compensation mechanism and you can respond to that. Yes. But then the other thing I want to say is, from a Swedish context, it's quite interesting that the price we're talking about, say that it's a higher price, so it's about 20-30 euros per ton rather than a 6-7 today, is still very, very marginal compared to the carbon dioxide tax that we have in Sweden, that the customers or normal people are actually carrying, which is somewhere 5, 10, 20 times higher, and your prices will of course also go to the customers in the end. So it's not only Vattenfall will push for prices for you. You will carry those forwards as well. So I think in that perspective, it's really it's timed for industry to pay a bit of its price as well. We have, of course, we have. I mean, of course, I'm talking about the climate challenge. The climate challenge is extremely urgent, and I think in terms of the credibility that Erik is talking about as well, EU really needs to lead on this, and it's a good development that ETS is now being discussed and implemented in several more countries, which probably wouldn't have been the case if EU didn't take the lead in this in the first place.
May I?
Please, Mikael, and then Paul.
Yeah. Well, I take note of 4 things. First, compensation mechanism. Well, the compensation mechanism is construed in that way that every member state separately may have such a system. So it's not it is a decision to be made by all the member states' governments. As of yet, only Germany, UK, and Norway has been really vocal about it. In Sweden, we don't know yet. But I think the notion is that they would rather not, and we have a case there explaining our the
positioning to get the compensation, or how should?
Well, of course. I mean, if we have a competition situation between one type of activity in Sweden and in Germany or any one of these countries, and there is an investment to be made, we have a worse situation than they have if we don't get the compensation. I mean, compensation as such is not our aim. I mean, from the beginning, when the ETS directive was concluded back in 2007, something like that, there was this issue of compensation was discussed as being a harmonized way of doing it. We would have had preferred that. But as it turned out, it wasn't the case. About urgency, of course, we feel the urgency in the climate change. Make no mistake about that. But the way the industry can contribute is not by not making products that are needed for a sustainable society. It's the other way around. If we believe, and we're proud of our products and the solution that we have, they actually help the global emissions go down. So in our view, it's not the way forward not to produce, but we feel the urgency. So, and then the carry forward that was explained. Well, if the prices are low, less is transferred. We as a company, if we have a cost coming into our production, of course the products will carry that cost. You were mentioning the carbon dioxide tax that is so much higher for the non-ETS sectors. Well, one of the reasons for that is that other sectors are not competing on a global scale. So we cannot, without restriction, just pass forward the regional costs of the EU ETS system to our customers. We cannot do that. So that's why we are discussing compensation and such for our sector. Of course.
I will make a stop here in the Swedish debate about how the competition situation and so on, and I'll just give the word back to Paul for some additional comments. What is your view given the proposal you have on the debate we just heard, and also if you could explain, apart from that, also how you view the possibility of this proposal actually being adopted by the European Union? If you see, do you have enough allies inside the European Union? But first, if you have some comment on what we actually heard, this kind of internal Swedish debate on pros and cons of on the set side.
Yeah, I think Mikael makes some really sensible points on, the need for market certainty, the need to really, as far as possible, let the market deliver these emissions reductions in the most cost-effective way. And so that's why the UK's approach, the UK's strong view is that, you know, this needs to be a one-off intervention to deal with this particular problem. We need to cancel these, and then let the market continue to deliver. But then look at the longer term of how it delivers the broader 2040, 2050 ambition. And that's really where the debate needs to involve all sectors, particularly industrial sectors, and those companies which are going to be most affected by any agreement that's made. So I think there's a lot of sensible stuff there. In terms of our proposal and, you know, how much support is there across the EU, I think it's fair to say the support at the moment is limited. There are a lot of member states who argue we shouldn't intervene at all. There are member states, a lot of the Eastern European member states argue that, or they prefer the approach that the Commission has suggested of backloading. There's very few member states at the moment who support cancellation. I think the private sector is similarly split. So I think it's quite a challenging area. I mean, from our perspective, you know, if we just postpone this debate, if we just postpone debating what we do with these excess allowances, it doesn't really solve the problem.
So you need the support from countries, I guess, like Sweden. You don't need to comment on that, but what is the position of industry inside Europe on this? If I can ask our two industrial representatives, and then please do put up your hands for any kind of basic or intricate question you'd like to ask. Anyone would be relevant. I know a lot of you are very knowledgeable, but please don't hesitate to ask even the basic questions. Erik and Mikael, very briefly on about how your different industrial organizations in Europe are grouping around this issue.
I think the power industry has been quite divided on this issue. There are a lot of different opinions and also different understandings of what it really means, these different concepts of set aside and backloading and so forth. But I think there has been a gradual increase in understanding that a unique intervention might be needed. I mean, we all share the view that the EU ETS is the preferred instrument for achieving significant emission reductions, and so there we have a starting point. And to what extent the politicians need to intervene in the market, it differs, but the branch organization on the EU level, Euroelectric, has a positive approach to this and has fed that into the Commission's process.
Well, and we know from not all different business sectors are represented here, of course, but we know that many others have aligned on different sides, actually, that there's a whole range of different industries falling on different sides in this issue. Mikael?
Well, speaking for the chemical industry and refineries and cement and aluminium or alloys, we believe that the ETS is functioning, so that by low prices we achieve what we aim for in the ETS. That's the industry position. We're very negative to go in and change the rules within in different ways, backloading, set-asides. However, industry knows and acknowledges that post-2020 there needs to be a thorough discussion of the path forward. And we like to be part of that. But we not only we have the reduction path moving towards 2050, but we also have to factor in what happens to the welfare of states, what happens to job growth in industry, how can the European industry actually lead by being that innovative industry. And that has to be factored in, but we welcome such a discussion. But I think the European industry does not want to see any changes or quick fixes just in order to up the prices.
Stefan, just before taking questions, we have at Flera sometimes been slightly sort of critical that the environmental movement in Europe are very keen to make specific campaigns on more direct and emotionally felt issues for people. But when we come here and have 25 times Sweden's emissions on the table to take out from the climate, even important for the climate change globally, then you just feel that you're not able to quite communicate or influence the different opinions in Europe. What is your response? Are we? You mentioned the Greenpeace, but what are you losing this battle against?
Hard others? Question. Yeah, well, I mean, certainly. I mean, in global debate, are we losing the 2-degree momentum at the moment? Well, at the moment, it looks really, really tricky. I mean, so yes, WWF is not looking very favorable to the global development and the political debates going on in various countries. On the set aside, well, it is a debate about the 30% by 2020 as well, and that, of course, I mean, it's already been out as well. I mean, you know, we first had Poland blocking that issue, and now some others blocking the issue. We try to, you know, go in and have questions about majority in the treaty and, you know, in the EU treaty, and, you know, can we actually use do we have a majority vote for 30% by 2020 in issues like that? We're really struggling to try to find ways forward, because we have 26 countries that try to move on this and one country blocking, but that country blocking is getting some allies now as well. So that's the 30% debate, and if EU would go to 30%, well, ETS is 40% of the emissions, so that needs to come with it with some kind of increase. But
the set aside is almost equivalent to 30% until 2020, isn't it? It would be about the same level.
We would need to see some increases in other areas as well. Yeah. But yeah. So, but yes, I mean but then again, 30%. So I don't know. Was that a question on this issue?
I know. I just asked.
I don't think we've lost this issue. I think this issue can have got good strengths to go through. Is it the ultimate solution, the only solution to climate change in 2 degrees? No.
Okay, now we'll open up for questions in the audience, and please free just to go to the basics. Once again, I repeat this because some people you might feel a bit intimidated by all those different technical terms. Please don't hesitate to ask the basic questions. Who goes first? I don't know if yeah, please.
I'm not sure if I can. I will try to. Yeah. Can you hear?
Oh, sorry.
I want to ask. Now there is a decreasing path of 1.74% or something like that for the ceiling, and it's going on forever. It's not. It doesn't have an end year 2020. Shouldn't this be reflected in the price? Do you understand what I mean? Or is it, if this...
Yeah, if they have saved 1 billion emission rights now, they're probably going to need them after 2020. And why does this not reflect on the price if this continues? And also, as we noticed from Flera, actually, if you look at the curve, if they're going to achieve the long-term goals, the decrease has to actually bend quite significantly after 2020 to achieve the long-term goals. So it's not quite sufficient this time, actually, either. I don't know who wants to go first. Erik, and then obviously we'd like to hear Paul on this one. Yes.
So maybe I can just say from a market perspective, all external analysts and we believe that market is oversupplied. There is this surplus, and all the projections shows that it will, if no measure is taken, it will last beyond 2020. So it means that even if the cap goes down a bit, like you said, and the economy picks up, there is a surplus. The market will not get balanced until 2025, something like that. So it all suggests that, I mean, if you have a trading period which is oversupplied, this price would be normally zero. But the fact that we have a positive price today in the market of around €8, it's explained by the fact that there is this long-term cap trajectory going down. If we wouldn't have the decisions from 2008 about things, what would happen long term, there would be a zero price today.
Already, because the industry is so far advanced already. So actually what holds up the prices, sometimes we tend to hope that there's a discredit. Yeah, but it's actually the hope that there will be more later on.
Yeah, it's a belief that the cap will go down and there will eventually be scarcity in the market in combination with expectations of intervention politically.
Paul?
I don't have that much to add, to be honest. I think cancellation, one of the benefits of cancellation will be that that the average sort of phase 3 price, our sort of economist estimate, will be between €4 and €24 higher because of cancellation than we would have without cancellation. I have to be honest, I'm not a technical expert on the price mechanisms per se. We have lots of experts in our ministry who know that inside out, so I can't really add any more.
But may I ask you about the credibility of the long-term target, given that you are maneuvering all those issues? What about the credibility of the long-term target after 2020? Do you feel that this is that the markets or the general public believes that there's going to be action sufficient after 2020 now?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know.
Stefan?
Well, we're suggesting that for credibility we would increase the linear reduction factor to 2.6%, and that would make it compatible with the 2050 objective that's been raised by Erik. So that would be year by year you would have a linear reduction towards the 2050 objective by EU, which we think is a good one. In particular, the upper level.
I should mention that we have a report by that we have commissioned where the Copenhagen Economics consultancy actually came out. So they believe that there is part of the price, long-term price, that is missing. So sort of, although as Erik pointed out, there are different interpretations. That, yeah, please, Mikael.
Copenhagen Economics also concluded that for every ton of chemicals not being produced in the Nordic area, the emissions go up. So
that wasn't, although in a different.
Okay,
yeah.
Same guys but different story. Well, I don't have a clear, answer to this issue. But looking forward, I can understand that. As the EU represents just a small part of world emissions, and the EU has chosen to lead by having the ETS, and that's why there is a conditional clause in going to 30%. That is very valid. It has been skipped so far in this discussion, but the thing is, what we really need is a true international agreement. Because that is the issue of competition for our industry. The thing is, how far can EU actually move ahead with not the industrial world catching up? Because, I mean, it's not as easy as saying, we have a very ambitious goal, please follow us. I mean, in the place of competition, that is not automatically so.
Okay, I'll take a question first, and then Stefan might respond.
My name is Anders Friström from the magazine Swedish Nature. I have a very simple question. As for Sweden, just now, at the end of last year, the surplus in the Swedish part of the ETS was 10 million tons, and in the forest report you have calculated for 2020 to be in total 58 million tons for the whole period, and if you get if it's worth €7 per ton, then that corresponds to 2 billion Swedish kronor worth to the Swedish industry in this period. But if the price is €20, that corresponds to 11 billion kronor. So, which is sort of gift to the Swedish industry. Why would anyone in the Swedish industry say no to that gift?
Well, the problem is we don't really have a representative for the whole Swedish industry here. We just have those who don't have enough emission rights here today. But maybe we could ask Erik and Mikael to comment anyway.
I can start. Firstly, in a system of trade, a trade system and a cap and trade system, you set your goal to achieve 21%. And as we see, we do that. You can accomplish that by doing different things. We did not like being in the recession 2008 and 2009. The whole society in Europe felt it. It was bad, and we're still not out of it. And the last report says that we're now in another recession. So of course, then we don't produce. That's one issue of not releasing it. I mean, should times been of good, we should have released that carbon dioxide, and that would be perfectly okay according to the plan. The other thing is we made investment of efficiency. We maybe changed the oil we still had. It was not much to begin with, burning other different fuels, including renewables. Some companies shut down. It's not a good way that we see to reduce emissions, but that's a fact. But the gift you're talking about, we are not in the business of selling allowances. Allowances for us is a way of actually producing. We're producing against the marginal price for our products. And in many of the products we produce, you reach a certain number of production and then there's no more free allocation, and then the price goes up. And then you make a decision. Is it profitable or not? We like to say that we should see that the efficient industry, the climate and energy efficient industry, is the one who produces most of the productions. Not that the emission rights just ran out on a global market where the other guys do not pay for it. So, well, that's my standpoint on that gift thing.
Okay, Erik?
Well, Vattenfall doesn't have any surplus of allowances, so I leave that to others to comment.
I don't know. May I just ask, isn't the fact that actually the companies get, with the new system, extra allowances because they are carbon efficient, couldn't you see that still as some kind of reward for being part of the decarbonization of the economy, that you get extra emission rights and that you get the possibility to sell them? Mikael, isn't that a... Aren't you a bit harsh on those who actually have managed to save those emission rights that they have got and can sell them on the market for a higher price?
But I thought I said that. I said that if you make an efficiency, if you do something that reduces your emissions, which is the whole aim of the ETS system, to do it in a cost-efficient way, at lowest cost, reduce emissions. Yeah. That's the whole thing. Yeah. So I don't really see it from your perspective that it's a reward or. I mean, we try to stay in business, and we try to make reductions of emissions in our processes.
Next question. I don't know. Was there any question now? No. If I just come back to the actual end game of this, what will happen, according to you, if the set aside is not implemented? First, I mean, if it's just being a backload, or maybe if it's simply not implemented. Erik has mentioned that the price might go considerably lower. What will be the future of this? We haven't really spoken about you just mentioned the public finance issue, that it means that a lot of EU governments will lose out on income, obviously, in this difficult situation, and will have to raise other taxes, I guess. But what will happen otherwise, or generally?
I mean, I think the main risk is the reputational one, really, to the EU as a bloc. not being seen as proactive, not being seen as delivering on its commitments. And unless we do that, then we're not going to get, as Stefan says, other countries acting. So I think the biggest risk is really around the reputational image for the EU as a bloc.
Coal burning is on record high in EU at the moment, despite the carbon market. Reputational risk is severe, and what I would add, so I would completely agree with Paul, and also I see that upping the target to 20% is by no chance seen by anyone outside Europe as a leading target for EU. I mean, EU has practically achieved it already. So the ambition of the next 10 years is what is being discussed at the global negotiations. So please, not anyone believe that the EU is seen as leading with a 20% target in terms of achieving below the 2 degrees warming. But a step to 30% would be within the agenda Pacharis and IPCC's range, at least between 25 and 40% from 2007. So at least then that would fall inside the range. This decision will be very, very important in order to actually achieve a step up to 30%. Very important.
Erik?
Yeah, without set aside, I think we will have sustained low prices, and at some point the system might play its role as a key driver, but in the meantime I think it will lose its relative role against within the overall toolbox of policies on EU level and national levels, and that could be a painful path for the EU ETS.
Mikael?
Well, we certainly do not see the 20% toll or target as a picnic for industry. Let that be clear. We have been having problems of having investments being done in Europe. The investment quota is going like this in Europe. It goes like this in Asia, in America. It's not a good position. So 20% is already bad for industry, new investment. And the new investment means better sustainability. What will happen? Well, in our view, as I said, we will achieve the 21% emission reduction at lowest costs. And that's what the whole system is about. Predictability will be strengthened. What we want, of course, is to level out the playing field for our industry, which is the main problem. We do not believe that the ETS system being changed is the good signal for predictability for other nations who want to connect with us. It creates a feeling of uncertainty. If politicians change their mind, they might change the whole ball game during the period that has been set, and I think it's really bad, because I believe that more of the industrial countries outside EU should do what we do. But if they're not, we have a real competitive problem.
What about the fact that the ball game has, I mean, from going from 25 to 6, hasn't the ball game changed a lot for you already? So inside the industry.
Stefan said that at the international level, EU is not regarded as a leader at 20%. But I don't see anyone else holding the flag except the EU. So I care to differ on that account. EU is trying to lead, but other countries do not want to go there, even at 20%.
Can I ask Paul to round up a bit and give our view of the UK government, of the present coalition? We're maybe a bit surprised from a Swedish perspective that it's the UK who comes with a more so to say, climate action-oriented proposal than Sweden has done. What is the view from the UK government and its point of view on climate strategy of the EU? If you could give some final comments on that.
Yeah. I mean, to set it in the national context for the UK, we have, as I think I mentioned earlier, 80% emissions reduction target by 2050, and we have the EU low carbon roadmap, which is really in line with that trajectory. So what we need to see from European climate change policy in our perspective is how we get to that target. How do we effectively decarbonise the vast swathes of the EU, really? Now, is the EU ETS the best mechanism for doing that? Is a further renewables target, for example, a good mechanism? I think what we need to see is some strategy developed over the next few years, so that we can start providing that certainty to investors so that they can invest in low carbon technologies and diversify and adapt to the challenge, but also to give that keep the international discussions moving forward. I think it's fair to say that there are other countries which are doing their bit. You know, China, for example, although it's heavily investing in coal, it's also heavily investing in low carbon technologies like nuclear and offshore wind. You know, some of the biggest offshore wind companies now are China. So there are other countries doing things, but I think, you know, from the UK perspective, we need to set the EU on the path which is going to best deliver in a cost-effective way our long-term target.
We have now two final questions, and I'll take them together because we're approaching the end, and give you a chance to answer those as a final push.
I am Daniel, working at Force. Perhaps directed mostly towards Mikael, but towards you as well. You speak about that the set side would create unpredictability, and then I guess the solution, if one would to increase the emissions, would be either to go to 30% to 2020, or already now start discussing the 2025, 2030, 2050 targets, because if one would have a really ambitious 2025 target or 2050 target, that would pretty have the same effect on price as a set aside would. So I was a bit curious, would you rather be interested in discussing real ambitious long-term targets rather than this set side, and what would then be the chances of Europe really achieving an ambitious targets that would take us to the roadmap targets that Paul is talking about? So to sum it up, you do not want a set aside because it creates unpredictability, but if we would have a long-term target that would create predictability but still rise the price, would that be more acceptable for you?
Okay, maybe we ask Mikael to answer directly, and then we'll take the next question. So
okay.
Yeah.
I would say that I would agree with Paul on that looking into the future should be done in a comprehensive way. We should look at all the different things that we can do, and the right way to do it is in a post-2020 perspective. So
but if you should put up a really ambitious targets for the future, or even go formally to 30%, which is within the framework of the present system, officially do, not by a set aside. If this raises the prices as much or even more, is it acceptable for the industry because it creates the long-term predictability?
Well, I would say that the things we do on climate change in Europe is to be part of the solution of the global climate problem, of course. Then it's quite academic, isn't it, to talk about high prices only in the EU? I mean, we know that we cannot solve the climate problem on our own, or by doing or not doing things in the EU. So my perspective is different. It's not about the price of it. It is, can we achieve reductions that will save on a global scale? That's, I think, is the main thing. If prices are really high in Europe, well, I would believe that could be possible if the world around us had the same price.
But basically, the long-term target would be okay if it would be a much more ambitious long-term target. That is fine. Is the actual intervention that is the problem, or is it the actual ambition level that is the problem?
The ambition level could be high, But then again, it's not about EU having its own high target. It won't solve the problem.
So there is also a problem with the ambition level also, apart.
Yes, if you don't have the world working around you in the same pace that you have, we cannot take the high price. Okay. It's as simple as that.
Okay, now the final question. I know we have a lot of environment bloggers, but I guess they're busy blogging.
I was wondering, yes. When we heard from Paul, you were talking about reaching the long-term targets to 2050. In Sweden, the debate is focused a lot around the 2020 targets and reaching them at the lowest possible costs. What about the costs of reaching the long-term targets? What will be the cost if we don't act up until 2020? Won't the cost of reaching the long-term targets increase from 2020 to 2050 if we don't act now?
I think we might give the last word to Paul on that one, or is anybody? Maybe I'll just give you, that might be the good cue for a final comment from all of you. A brief final comment from you, and especially from Paul.
Okay.
Mikael,
should I start? Well, I don't know. We know technology is developing. Things we don't know what kind of technology we will have in the future or what cost that is, but then again, if we look into the future and say, should we do it now or should we not do it now, I would be glad to do the things that are really good if I can stay in business doing it. So it's more, the perspective is, I have a problem relating to it is better to do it now. My position is more, can we? Because we want to stay in business and we want to do the good things. So that would be my cue on that.
Erik?
Yes. Yeah, I'm very glad that this discussion also evolved towards the structural reforms and with the 2030 target discussion, because I mean, we're making investments in both industry and power sector that last so many decades, and looking beyond 2020 is so useful for us. And it means that we support the 2030 target, and it should be in line with the roadmap 2050 ambitions. Otherwise, the EU ETS will not be the center pillar if you have a lower ambition in the ETS than in the EU economy as a whole. And then my final word is we are very hesitant to short-term quick fixes. We believe that if it's done in the wrong way, it can threaten the credibility of the ETS as a market instrument. So it should not be used for steering the price in a certain direction. We want the price to be set by the market and the cap by politicians. But if it's done properly, you can do good things for the system, considering the serious situation it is in today.
So fix the cap, but not the price. Okay. Finally, thank you, Erik. And also, yeah, you may comment on the rest of the strategy, how they work together, so that one doesn't create redundancy in the other. And Stefan, and finally the Paul's. So summing up.
Yeah, on the question of if we wait until 2020, the answer is yes. I mean, if we are seriously wanting to stay below 2 degrees global warming, the cost will increase dramatically if we wait for action until after 2020. If you start today, for example, if you look at I don't know the figures in my head, but if you look at the annual reduction global event, so we don't look at the EU now for this discussion, we look at the carbon intensification of economy. So for each dollar, we will have to increase 5% per year the output in terms of carbon reduction related to economic indicators. If we wait until 2020, we would probably have to do 7 or 8% per year. And that's completely unprecedented, apart from the Russian crash in the 90s. Right? So yes, waiting, delaying, much higher costs. 2030 target debate is good. We need to not only talk about 2020, we need to talk 2030 in terms of climate targets and efficiency targets, and not least renewable energy targets, because we really need to get the renewable energy infrastructure up and running. And then exactly as Erik says, we need a longer investment horizon for that. We can set more ambitious renewable energy targets if we look at a 2030 timeframe, and that will reduce emissions. But in terms of the structural, looking at this on a structural level, of course that's what needs to be done, and that's what the EU has done, and that's what the international negotiations have done as well. And I just want all sectors will have to contribute, including the industrial sector and the production of goods. There's a great report from the International Council of Chemicals Association, for example, saying exactly what Mikael is saying on innovations for greenhouse gas reductions. It's innovations in solar energy, innovations in energy efficiency, housing, transport, enabled by chemicals. And that's great. So this report is even saying we need to go in with regulations for housing, we need to go in for regulations for transport, and the chemical sector is saying that. But for Christ's sake, we need to then regulate as well the chemical sector and the heavy emitters. We can't just come from a sector and say we should regulate other sectors. All sectors need to contribute.
Okay, Paul.
Thank you. I'd echo many of the comments just made. We carried out the Stern review, which some people may be aware of, and that really demonstrated that it is actually, the longer you put off tackling climate change, the worse it becomes, the more costs it inflicts on you, and the bigger impact it has on your overall security of resources, food, water, energy, etc. And that really, in the UK, led to the Climate Change Act, which I mentioned earlier, and that in itself is driving the UK's leadership ambition, if you like. I think the key thing to achieving this transformation to a low carbon economy is really getting it right, and it's giving that certainty to the market to invest. It needs to be, I think we probably all agree on this, it needs to be market driven. It needs to support companies to actually diversify into low carbon. Now, whether that's through a renewable energy target, whether that's through the EU ETS, whether that's through some new innovation which academics are thinking about as we speak, for example, we need to provide that certainty and we need to have that clarity. I think that's really, for me, the key thing we need going forward.
Thank you very much, Paul. We learned all of this, and also that there is big need now to drum up support for your proposal in the EU from your side. We hope that this has actually been taken note of here in Stockholm. We hope, you're not at liberty to say, but we do hope that the Swedish government, as Flera has written, has actually contemplates your proposal. We also learned that there's different views on actually how much is factored in the price right now of the expectation of this set aside or taking out this, and we also heard that there are different views of how necessary it is to reach the target, but that's really part of getting the target. Thank you very much, Paul, for being the center of this discussion and for presenting this proposal. I understand you are now moving towards you're moving to the different government offices in Stockholm. We wish you all the luck there, and thank you very much, no least for Mikael, who managed to take the contrarian stand with a lot of grace, to Erik and to Stefan, and for all of you who asked questions and intervened. Thank you very much.